thank you very much for this presentation. And yeah, I hope that this will be the dessert that we didn't get during the lunchtime. I hope that these presentations will keep you entertained till fika. Yeah, so we are going to talk about AI governance and the regulation, the regulatory environment that we are facing. And first of all, we need to understand what is AI governance, how we can define AI governance, what's the concept of AI governance. So we can say that AI governance refers to the frameworks and practices that we in different organizations can implement in order to ensure that we are developing and implementing AI technology in a responsible and ethical way. So that's basically a definition, in short, of AI governance. But we also need to be aware of the constant evolution of the regulation and how the regulation is now showing more and more, let's say, interest on addressing our area of interest, AI. So in this case, we need to pay attention to all these evolving regulations and how they are interested on addressing risks and also opportunities for safe and fair and accountable AI systems. That's the motto of the AI regulation. We want to develop safe, fair, and accountable AI systems. So the challenge for our organizations, the challenges for us involved in this discussion of AI regulation is, okay, how we can navigate all this regulatory, let's say, tsunami, and mitigate the potential risk associated to the development and implementation of AI systems. And then the answer, or let's say the word or the concept that appears as an answer, as a potential answer to this challenge is the structuring of AI governance. And how we can, by implementing these processes, by implementing these frameworks, we can offer an answer to the challenges that the regulation is posing on this area. And when we talk about AI governance, it's important to take into account different concepts. It's important to take into account components and principles that need to be addressed when we talk about governance. So if we look at this picture, we can say that, okay, if we go to the different regulatory frameworks, policies developed or under development in the recent years, we can say that there are some like basic principles that are already present in all these policies and regulatory frameworks. These principles are fairness, are accountability, transparency, ethical considerations, and safety and security. So the idea of an AI governance system or a structure or framework is try to address, is try to offer answers to those concepts. Is to offer a solution or offer or visualize that we are committed to offer an answer to these principles that are present in all the regulations. And we need to pay attention to what the policies and procedures need to take into account, the policies and procedures that we define for our organizations, what they need to take into account when facing these principles. We need to be aware of, okay, developing and implementing oversight mechanisms that offer an answer to those principles present in the regulation. It's important to think about how to handle the risks, how to implement risk management systems or frameworks within our organizations in order to offer an answer to these challenges. And it's also really important to involve all the different stakeholders within the organization. AI is not only a concept that matters the technical side of the organization, but it should be seen as a transversal area, that it impacts all the different areas and levels within the organization, with certain or with different levels of responsibility, with different levels of impact, but it's important to involve all of them in the concept of AI governance. And of course, something that needs to be present when we develop AI governance is to pay attention to the continuous improvement. This is not let's say, the final definition or the final framework. We need to learn as we are implementing. We need to pay attention to the new challenges that will arise with the technology like AI, that it's always evolving and showing us new potentialities. And be aware that, okay, we need to keep this continuous improvement mindset when developing our AI governance structures. So the idea here, is that by implementing, let's say, a well-structured AI governance system or AI governance framework, we can offer a solution to the myriad of different regulatory propositions or developments currently happening worldwide. I'm not going to talk about all these different regulations. This is just a slide to show you what's going on in the world. And I would say that probably we might need to add some other countries to this list. So this is currently, let's say, growing. The list of countries regulating AI is growing. And we need to be proactive in the sense that we need to offer an answer to the challenge presented by these regulatory developments. Perhaps one of the first approaches is to go from, let's say, the highest level, pay attention to, let's say, the top 3 markets in the regulatory and AI development, and try to identify what are the common points, the common areas where we need to pay attention. What are the, let's say, the key areas of focus of these markets in order to identify those similarities, to integrate them in the development of an AI governance structure. Remember, we are talking about processes. We are talking about training. We are talking about defining mechanisms, guidelines to implement oversight, to implement risk management, to implement or define ethical principles within the organizations. If we look at what the different markets would say, we can also find like different types of approaches. In one hand, we have the European approach that seems to be, let's say, or show the clear line about, okay, we need to regulate this technology. We need to set principles. We need to define standards to guarantee that all this, let's say, fundamental rights protection and the protection of these fundamental rights is set, is written in stone when developing AI. And they have released this AI regulation, and they are also coming with a new set of standards that will be used to certify that we are fulfilling those requirements. On the other hand, we have, let's say, the more relaxed approach, probably a more innovation-centric or probably market-centric approach in the US, where they are not aiming at targeting a specific or developing a federal regulation at all levels, but they are aiming at, okay, leave the market to rule and control itself. And we are going to define probably some frameworks, some standards that won't be mandatory, but will be recommended to pay attention to in order to set our AI processes and the development of our AI systems. And probably the third approach is in between. So we still need to develop standards. We need to offer certain kind of regulatory guardrails to guarantee the protection of certain levels of fundamental rights. But at the same time, we need to provide, or we need to give the market enough space to self-regulate. So those are like the three different areas, or the 3 different approaches when talking about regulation. And when we are offering, and when we are talking about AI governance, the idea is try to be as generic as possible to give place to these different approaches. We cannot only develop an AI governance focused on Europe, because the AI systems won't be placed only in Europe. We need to pay attention to what's going on in the US, what's going on in China, in South Korea, in Japan, and try to offer a framework as flexible as possible to offer an answer to all these challenges. And what are the challenges when we talk about AI governance? We can identify some of them. The first challenge is, okay, how to balance innovation and regulation. Because sometimes we perceive that the regulation is there just to limit how much we can innovate. And probably the approach should be different. My point of view in this case is that we should see the regulation as an opportunity to understand what type of challenges are present there and what are the creative and innovative solutions that we can implement to fulfill the requirements. What are the alternatives that we have to fulfill the requirements, to be innovative enough, but also compliant enough with what the regulation states. And the standards that will come in the next months, and probably by the beginning of next year, will offer us also an alternative to find this level of flexibility that we are looking for. We need to understand that there is a diverse, evolving environment in terms of regulations. And we cannot try to keep track of all of them, but we need to understand what are the similarities, what are the key common points, and we need to identify how to address those points. We need to be creative. And this is about intelligence, not artificial intelligence. It's about the intelligence of our organizations to face these challenges. Of course, this will require some resources. We need people behind this, people like me, smart enough to offer, let's say, innovative solutions from a compliance perspective to face this challenge. That's why they recruited me from my job in ASSA in Volvo Cars. I was quite relaxed in Volvo Cars, dealing with some other challenges when they recruited me from ABLOY, because they wanted experts in this field, in artificial intelligence, to deal with the challenges coming from the regulation. We need to pay attention to the ethical considerations, but this should be seen as part of, let's say, an overarching concept. We cannot talk about developing ethical AI if our company in general is not an ethical company. AI is just a technology. AI is a component. And we cannot talk about a company like ABLOY developing only ethical artificial intelligence, but non-ethical entrance systems or access systems. Ethical is a part of, let's say, an overarching concept that should be present as part of the spirit of the organization and should be incorporated in every process within the organization, not only when we talk about AI. And of course, one of the key challenges is how to identify the high-risk AI systems, because I forgot to mention that in one of my previous slides. But in general, all the regulatory concepts or the frameworks, probably beyond the US approach, are interested on these high-risk type of solutions with certain differences, but in all of them is present the need to address risks. But if it comes a challenge, it's also important to be aware of what are the opportunities in this case. And the opportunities are here. One is global collaboration. Conference like this, events like this, the exchange of information like this can be seen as an opportunity to strengthen the collaboration in how we address these regulatory challenges. We can exchange information. We can talk about, okay, how Ericsson, how Mavenir, how Volvo Cars, how ABLOY are understanding the situation, and probably start sharing information about best practices. It's a common challenge. Why do we need to try to take this challenge alone? If the challenge is common, we should find common spaces to discuss and find alternatives to address these common challenges. It's also a good opportunity to foster innovation. As I mentioned before, we need to find alternatives to face the challenge, offer an answer to this problem, but also show compliance with. In engineering, let's say one of the mottos is, if we have a problem, if we have a challenge, we don't stay quiet and we say, okay, we are defeated by the problem, we are defeated by the challenge. What we do is try to find a solution, smart and innovative solution to face that challenge. So why not applying the same principle that we apply when developing products to address specific situations, specific problems of the society to this challenge? That's my invitation. It's also a good opportunity to build trust. If we are exchanging information, if we are aiming to collaborate within all the actors in this ecosystem, we are also opening the door for building trust. And this is also a good opportunity when we are structuring an AI governance to show, okay, we are committed to fulfill the regulatory requirements. We are committed to address the potential fears that the society might have regarding AI technology. And we are offering them an alternative to show them, to guide them in this process, to understand the technology and say, okay, we understand your concerns, but we are also working on addressing those concerns. And this is also an important point. Of course, one opportunity is, okay, how we can use this as a competitive advantage. I have mentioned several times the concept of standards, standardization. If we look at what has been the role of standardization in areas like the telco industry, standardization has gone hand in hand with the development of new IP. Patents are, let's say, a close result of the discussions taken within the standardization world. Right now, Sense and ELEC, ISO are discussing standardization on AI. We are talking about cybersecurity, how we are going to standardize cybersecurity. We are talking about quality management systems. We are talking about data, bias, data management. We are talking about risk management. There is plenty of space to come with potential IP solutions, IP, for this issue. And of course, by offering risk mitigation, we are, as I mentioned before, offering to the society a message. We are sharing a message. We are committed to help, to guide you in this process and help you understand that there is, even though that there might be some concerns, we are here to support you in those concerns and address those concerns together. So, from my humble perspective, what are the strategies that we can implement? What are the best practices that we can take into account when trying to devise an AI governance framework to navigate all these complexities coming from different regulations? The first one is, of course, we need to understand what's going on out there to do a regulatory mapping. But again, based on this collaboration principle, if I'm in ABLOY, I'm doing a regulatory mapping for the same regulations that Ericsson, Volvo Cars, Seeker, SKF, all these companies are doing. Why not sharing the same information? Why reinventing the wheel in a separate track if at the end we are facing the same, I'm not going to say this, but the same bull, the same enemy, so to say. So regulatory mapping is important. It's important to understand what's going on around. And probably we can exchange a lot of information and have a common view. And then the specificities of how we are going to implement that within our organizations will come as a separate part of the plan. It's important also to develop and start thinking about how we are going to conduct risk assessments. Risk is one of the key words when we talk about regulation. There are standards currently under development on how we are going to do that. But we can start by taking a look at the solutions we are developing currently in our organizations and try to understand first what might be the impact of these AI systems when operating in the real world. We can start by doing this self-assessment process of what will be the impact of this solution, what will be the impact of the chatbot I'm going to implement in this e-commerce platform. What are the potential impact if I use an AI-based tool to, for example, evaluate CVs? What are the implications of it? And try to understand the risk. We can rely also on the standards that will come in the future. We can develop and enforce ethical guidelines. And again, these are independent from the concepts that we probably can link only to the AI world. It's necessary to talk about training and awareness. It's important to talk about not only the technical matter. It's relevant, it's important, but it's also good that all the different levels within the organizations can talk about AI from different perspectives, about the social implications, about the technical implications, about the business implications. So we have a common understanding, and we have a common dialogue within the organization. And it's important to pay attention to the continuous monitoring. Sometimes we, as engineers, don't like to be constantly monitored for what we are doing. But the regulation comes with this approach. We need to monitor what's going on. We need to monitor how the solutions that we are implementing are behaving in the environment, and pay attention to those signs to make or to fix potential issues that might arise when these systems are in operation. It's important to keep that in mind. And finally, to conclude with this presentation, I would like to share some basic points. So when we talk about AI governance, we need to think about as the tool, the framework that will help us to navigate the regulatory challenges and offer, let's say, responsible, ethical, and transparent AI development within the organizations. It's important to understand and navigate the global AI regulation in order to show compliance. It's important to take a strategic approach, a mindset thinking about continuous improvement and risk management when we talk about how we are going to overcome the challenges faced in the regulatory area. It's good to see, or it will be desirable to see, that the AI governance framework is a tool to foster innovation. It's a tool to find alternatives to face a common challenge. The organizations, big ones, small ones, medium ones, they should prioritize AI governance to be compliant and in order to develop, let's say, the cutting-edge solutions in the AI environment. This is not only concerning big organizations, big tech corps. SMEs, small companies also need to fulfill these requirements and need to pay attention to what's going on worldwide. And again, the collaboration and the innovation are key for developing responsible and ethical AI systems. So that's it from my side, and yeah, thank you for your attention.
Luis, thank you so much for a very, very relevant presentation. This is really an important area. We do have some time for a few questions, so let's take a look at the audience and see if there are any. Let's start over here, and then later we will take you in the back.
Yes, this is Behruz Razaznejad from Volvo AB. Really interesting presentation. Thank you for that. You mentioned that risk management is a central part of the regulatory framework that we should develop. What is your view of what is an AI system that we need to include in our risk management?
Okay, probably probably one of the thresholds or concepts that we need to take into account, I'm personally speaking, would be the level of impact of the level of interaction the system will have with human beings. Because one of the key components in this case for all these regulations is the protection of the fundamental rights of human beings. So how close is this interaction of the AI system with a human being or information coming from a human being? I would say that those systems should be prioritized when applying this high-risk or high-risk process of identification or the identification of the potential risks. It will be different if we are talking about, I don't know, an AI system implemented for a video game, just to improve, let's say, the feeling of how we play with, I don't know, if we are playing a football game, that comes with certain AI. But the relevance of this AI is different if we talk, for example, about an AI that will be used, for example, for medical diagnosis. So the level, how close is the system to interact with a human being or data coming from a human being with potential impact on fundamental rights, that should be the first criteria when identifying high-risk systems.
Thank you so much. The time is out for questions. I'm so sorry. Can you maybe catch Luis at the break and ask your question? We do have to move on with the schedule.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis, so much.